السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله حمدا كثيرا طيبا مباركا فيه والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين وبعد. Alhamdulillah, we started Surah Al-Inshiqaaq last week and we covered about half the surah, more than half the surah, 25 ayat for the total surah, and we finished 1 through 15. And inshallah we'll go through ayat 16 through 25 today. And if you remember where we left off, Allah Azza wa Jal starts off by mentioning some of the instances that will take place on the last hour, the last day, when the earth will be destroyed. As the Prophet ﷺ said, مَنْ سَرَّهُ أَنْ يَنْظُرَ إِلَى يَوْمِ الْقِيَامَةِ فَلْيَقْرَأْ إِذَا الشَّمْسُ كُوِّرَتْ وَإِذَا السَّمَاءُ انْفَطَرَتْ وَإِذَا السَّمَاءُ انْشَقَّتْ. That whoever wants to see what the last hour will be like, what the destruction of the earth will be like, then let him read these three surahs, Surah Al-Takwir, Surah Al-Infitar, and Surah Al-Inshiqaaq, which are almost back to back, except with Surah Al-Mutaffifin coming in between. So these surahs, they tell us, they show us, or give us a description of what will happen towards that last hour. And again, the whole theme behind these early Meccan surahs is to put into the hearts of people that the hereafter is something real. And since we're studying the last juz, the last portion of the Quran, the majority of it is focused on this, right? And this is the early surahs. Again, we mentioned this is something, the 80-something surah that came down in the early Meccan period. So many verses of the Quran were coming down over and over again, reminding people about the reality of the hereafter. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He ends the previous passage by saying that Allah Azza wa Jalla is watching, seeing everything that they do, those that deny the resurrection. And then He starts with this passage, and He says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم فلا أقسم بالشفق والليل وما وسق والقمر إذا اتسق لتركبن طبقا عن طبق. The rough translation of which is, so I swear by the shafaq, right? And the translator here says the twilight. We'll explain what that is. And by the night when it wasaqa. Wasaqa means one of two things, either when it covers something. Generally the meaning is to gather. So the darkness is gathering over something, it's taking over it. And by the moon when it becomes full, إِذَا اتَّسَقْ, when the moon itself becomes full and gathers all the light. لَتَرْكَبُنَّ طَبَقًا عَنْ طَبَقٍ. So Allah is swearing by these three things that what will happen? That you will surely pass through one state after another state. This is what Allah Azza wa Jalla is saying. He's swearing by these three things. And what is He swearing for? Right? I swear by the shafaq, by the night as it gathers everything, and by the moon as it becomes completely bright. What's going to happen? What is it I'm swearing by? Or why am I swearing? That وَلَتَرْكَبُنَّ طَبَقًا عَنْ طَبَقٍ. You will surely go from one state into another state. And we'll look at some of the meanings here. One thing that's come up before is فَلَا أُقْسِمُ, right? A lot of times we get confused. We understand Arabic in the modern times, and we're a little bit distant from the classical original Arabic. If you say in the Quran it says لا أقسم, what does that mean? I don't swear, right? And generally, if you were to learn Arabic now and you read لا أقسم بيوم القيامة ولا أقسم بالنفس, generally you would think I don't swear, right? So that's not what it means. Why does the negation come before the word I swear? There are different reasons for this. Again, one of them is simply it's an effect of the language, right? It's an effect of the language that when you want to say I swear, you say لا أقسم. You put the negation in front of it. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does this in a different portion of the Quran where He says to Iblis, قَالَ مَا مَنَعَكَ أَنْ لَا تَسْجُدَ إِذْ أَمَرْتُكَ. Say, what has prevented you from not prostrating, linguistically, when I commanded you? But we know that he did not prostrate, right? So he was supposed, what has prevented you from prostrating when I commanded you? But it becomes an extra thing you put in to give emphasis in the language. And the context gives rise to this, right? So none of the Arab grammarians ever understood this to mean I don't swear, but we have to understand this now so we don't have these confusions. Also, la comes as a negation to a previous claim. The whole surah has been talking about what? That the people that deny the hereafter. So one of the interpretations of the la is Allah Azza wa Jalla is negating any kind of argument that is coming before it. That is, that you say there is no hereafter. Allah says, فَلَا أُقْسِمُ. But no, you're wrong. I swear by the shafaq. And these are the ways to understand the meaning of the word la in this context here. But it means Allah Azza wa Jalla is swearing by the shafaq. And He swears by three parts or three things that happen in the night. The first is the shafaq. The shafaq is the redness that remains after the sun has set. So when the sun goes down, you still have this red light, right? It's called the shafaq al-ahmar, this humra, this redness that stays in the sky. That is the shafaq, right? So Allah Azza wa Jalla is swearing by that light or that period of the night when there's still that red glow. And then وَاللَّيْلِ وَمَا وَسَقَ, and the night as it and what it envelops or as it gathers. Some of the meanings here, when the darkness overtakes everything in sight, right? So you have the redness that's there, but then it gets even darker than that, and then you have the darkness slowly overtaking the mountains, the trees, the houses, and everything else that we see. Another thing that it could mean with the meaning of gather is when the night causes everything that was outside to gather inside its houses or in their homes, right? Including animals and insects and things that are generally outside during the daytime, but because of nighttime the darkness has now come, they all gather inside their homes. And a lesser known opinion is that it's referring to the stars, which kind of, they say it's in tune with Allah Azza wa Jalla talking about the sky, right? Gathering what? As the stars start to appear, it looks like they're starting to gather, right? As it gets darker and darker and darker, you see more and more and more stars. So وَاللَّيْلِ وَمَا وَسَقَ, and the night and all that it gathers, some of them, the Mufassirin say it refers to the stars as they start to appear. So again, the focus is on the sky. And then Allah Azza wa Jalla swears by the moon, وَالْقَمَرِ إِذَا اتَّسَقَ, and the moon when it becomes full in its light, right? When it becomes full in its light, and these are what are known as Ayyam al-Bid, or the 13th, 14th, and 15th nights of the lunar calendar, right? Of the Islamic calendar that we have, when the moon is generally its fullest, right? The 15th is full, 13th and the 15th, 15th is full. Some of the scholars also said 16, 17, 18. Generally when the moon is at its brightest stage. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swears by these three parts of the night that mankind will certainly pass through one state after another. So again, what is the connection between swearing by these three portions of the night with the argument that man will pass through one state after another? And these are some of the points of Mufassirin, the scholars of Tafsir, they brought out. So some of them said that the red after the sunset, the darkness as it rolls over, and the light of the moon are different states that the night itself goes through, right? So Allah is showing that nothing in this existence that He created just is and then it's gone and then it's finished, but everything moves through different states, right? You don't just live and die and that's it. Just like the sky doesn't go from daytime, all of a sudden it's dark to nighttime, right? But it goes in different stages. It moves from one state to the other. Similarly, mankind will also go through from one state to another. We'll see what that means in more detail. But there's a connection there, as showing the different states the night goes through, from a little bit of light to darkness to even when there's nothing, but then the moon is still bright. So Allah is showing the different stages of the night. Another explanation for this is a similitude of the last hour, the last time when the earth will be destroyed, and so on and so forth, which is in connection with the previous ayat we're talking about. So they said the redness after sunset is talking about the coming of the destruction, right? The night is about to come, and that the horn is about to be blown, everything is about to be destroyed. The darkness of the night, kind of represents the shock and fright people will experience on the day of judgment, because generally the darkness of the night is associated with these things as well. And then the full moon refers to the mercy that will be shown to the believers, right? This is one of the opinions as well that the Mufassirin give as to what is the connection with Allah Azza wa Jalla swearing by these three things, with the fact that mankind will go from one state to another. And so what does that mean, going from one state to another? Again, it's referring to the idea that they had, that once we die, we will be nothing after that. So Allah Azza wa Jalla is saying that that's not going to happen. One state, you will always go from one state to another. This is one of those phrases in the Quran, which the Mufassirin say it's so general that it has a wide application in terms of its meaning. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't specify one specific thing. Even the verb لَتَرْكَبُنَّ, that you will definitely, physically tarkabu means to get on top of something, to write, right? But metaphorically means to take on, right? You will take on or pass through something. طَبَقًا عَنْ طَبَق, right? Tabaq is the lid of a pot is called tabaq. And when you turn it over and you start putting, using it as a plate almost, right? As a dish, this is what's called tabaq, right? And it gives that meaning because when you cover a pot, the cover of the pot is the exact same size as what you're covering, right? And that's why we have the word mutabaqa. That means it's similar, it's going along, and so on and so forth. It comes from the meaning of something being of similar size and similar shape and covering completely. This is what it means. It's a very general wording. And so the scholars of Tafsir have different narrations for this. The companions of the Prophet ﷺ gave a couple of different narrations for what this could mean, because it's something that's widely applicable. And this is one of those ayat that shows us the depth of the Quran, right? The wisdom of the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nothing is specified here, but there's a lot of things that could be meant, including what the verb goes back to. Is it talking about the Prophet ﷺ? Is it talking about mankind in general? Or is it talking about the sky, which Allah Azza wa Jalla was using and He's swearing by when He's getting our attention to the redness of the night, the stars and so on, and the moon and so on and so forth, looking at the sky. Even it can refer to something that has to do with the sky. So one of the meanings is that the mankind will go from one state to another, meaning you have a period of life on this earth. Then you will die. Then you will be resurrected. Then you will stand before Allah. You will have the presentation of your deeds. And we talked about this, hisab and yasira, right? When the presentation of all that you did will be there. Then there will be the judgment. Then there will be paradise or hellfire and mercy or punishment, so on and so forth. Meaning even the death of a human being is not the end of anything, right? Even the resurrection is not the end of it. There are other stages that people have to go through before they enter their final resting place. So this is one of those things that Allah is saying is not only is there a hereafter, it's not going to be like this, right? There's going to be stages people are going to go through. Another meaning for this is that you will go through stages just in this life, because as Allah says, "Inna ma'al usri yusra, inna ma'al usri yusra," right? With difficulty comes ease. So you have periods of difficulty that are followed by periods of ease, and vice versa, right? You have periods of when you're well off, followed by a period of when you're maybe not so well off, when you're in financial difficulty. And Allah Azza wa Jalla mentions this in the Quran, right? وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ مِنَ الْخَوْفِ وَالْجُوعِ وَنَقْصٍ مِنَ الْأَمْوَالِ. We will test you with the loss of life and loss of wealth and fear and all these types of things. You will go through these things. And similarly, if you're healthy and then you're sick, right? So mankind themselves go through these different stages as well. If it refers to the sky, again, these previous three surahs we've been talking about are talking about the beginning of the destruction, and it starts with the sky, right? إِذَا الشَّمْسُ كُوِّرَتْ, when the sun is wrapped up, إِذَا السَّمَاءُ انْفَطَرَتْ, when the skies tear apart, right? And we have these different verses talking about the different stages of the destruction of the existence as well. And they talk about how the sky will be كَالْمُهْلِ, right? Like wool or كَالدِّهَان, like smoke, and then it will be torn apart, and then it will be peeled away, right? All of these types of things. So Allah Azza wa Jalla is even talking about not just you, the sky itself is going to go through these different stages, and the context now is talking about the last hour. When the last day takes place, the sky that you see, the redness, the moon, the stars, all of this will be gone, right? All of this will change. And so this will even go through different stages as well. And another minor opinion is that it could be referring to the Prophet ﷺ, meaning the verb is in the first person, as the second person. لَتَرْكَبُنَّ, you will indeed pass through طَبَقًا عَنْ طَبَقٍ, different, one state after another, with these people, right? With the people that are denying the akhirah, you will pass through one state after another, and they refer to this as, the victory of over one tribe over another, or influence over one tribe over another, victory over one group over another, and so on and so forth, until this religion spreads. So again, one of those ayat that's very, very general, but it can talk about many, many things, and this is the miraculous nature of the Quran. This is something that mankind cannot produce, right? Something you have in a context, and even that context can change because of the generality of the words that are used. And this is something that is beyond the ability of people to produce. This is something only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can do. And again, with the thought in mind that all of this can be applied to different meanings, never one meaning contradicting the other or causing any issues. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continues, says, فَمَا لَهُمْ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ وَإِذَا قُرِئَ عَلَيْهِمُ الْقُرْآنُ لَا يَسْجُدُونَ. And we'll talk about ayah number 21 and some of the rulings of the ayah to sajda, and whether or not the sajda is obligatory or optional, and so on and so forth. But Allah says, فَمَا لَهُمْ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ. So what is the matter with them? Rough translation, that they do not believe. Wait, مَا لَهُمْ. What's going on with them? لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ. They don't believe. وَإِذَا قُرِئَ عَلَيْهِمُ الْقُرْآنُ لَا يَسْجُدُونَ. And when the Quran is recited to them, they do not make sujood, right? And the word sujood here in the translation is translated as to prostrate. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses this word, sajda or yasjud, to mean to submit, right? We have other ayat in the Quran, I can't remember exactly, we can give as examples, but he uses the word sajda in the form of the word to submit, to give in, right? Same as the word Islam, to submit, to give in. But here also specifically refers to sajda as well, but mainly it refers to, as the Mufassirin have said, yakhda'un, right? Why don't they give in and submit to what they're hearing because of the context of these ayat. So again, what is preventing them from believing in this message? In Allah and His Messenger, the Quran, all these proofs that Allah Azza wa Jalla has given them. By this time, when this ayah is revealed, there have been at least 80 other surahs of the Quran that have been addressing the issue of the hereafter, right? So it's really, by this time, what is it that they do not believe? What's wrong with them that they don't accept? And again, why don't they believe in the events of the hereafter when Allah Azza wa Jalla is describing them with such accuracy and also with such truth? And then لا يسجدون, when the Quran is recited to them, they don't make sajda, meaning they don't submit to it, they don't humble themselves before the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so this is an ayah of sajda for, I believe, most of the scholars, right? And so this brings us to the issue of the ayat of sajda that we have in the Quran as well. It's relevant, so we'll go over it quickly, inshallah. The verses of prostration, ayat to sajda, and you see them when they'll have, in the Mus'haf, they'll have a line over them and a mark at the end of the ayah on the side of the page that indicates that we make sajda after reading or reciting this or hearing this ayah in the Quran. So it's a sunnah by the majority of the scholars. It's not something that is an obligation. It's important to understand. It's a sunnah mu'akkada with some of the scholars, meaning it's a high level sunnah that it's important for you to do it, but there's no sin upon you if you let it go. With other scholars, it's considered a fadila, meaning it's a virtue. You do it, good. You don't, okay, nothing. But generally, it's accepted by the majority of the scholars. It's a sunnah mu'akkada. It's a recommended and optional sunnah. So highly recommended. Just because we say it's not obligatory, doesn't mean you don't do it, right? It's an important sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. It's been narrated. Many things have been narrated about it. We give it importance, right? And this is how we show Allah Azza wa Jal our care for His kalam, for His speech, for the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ by acting on the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. What it means is that if you are praying in the salah and you read the ayah of sajda and you did not make sajda, your salah is fine, right? So when it comes to the rulings, this is where the ruling applies, that it's not obligatory, it's sunnah mu'akkada. So if you didn't do it in the prayer, then you don't have to repeat anything, you don't have to make the prostration of forgetfulness, you just continue on in your salah. It's a sunnah fata makanaha, it's a sunnah or an option that the time of which has passed, so you don't have to repeat it. So again, there's scholarly consensus for its legitimacy, meaning it's not something that anybody disagrees exists in the Quran. So we know that the one who recites the ayah, with reciting the Quran, and the one who hears it, or listens to it intentionally with the intention to listen to the Quran being recited, right? Versus somebody who's passing by and somebody reads it and he just hears the ayah being recited, right? And we have these rulings come from the examples of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum. I believe this happened with Uthman radiallahu anhu. He was walking by, somebody read the ayah and he did not make the sajda because he was not listening to the recitation, he was just passing by, right? So we have these examples of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum that explain these rulings for us. Somebody who hears it intentionally, it's a sunnah for them to do it. It's definitely not bad if you hear it and you do the sajda anyway. There's nothing wrong with that. If you hear the ayah, you didn't intend to listen to it, but you make the sajda out of hearing the ayah, definitely that's fine. The Prophet ﷺ said in a hadith narrated by Imam Muslim, إِذَا قَرَأَ ابْنَ آدَمَ السَّجْدَ فَيَسْجُدُ اعْتَزَلَ الشَّيْطَانُ يَبْكِي يَقُولُ يَا وَيْلَهُ أُمِرَ ابْنُ آدَمَ بِالسُّجُودِ فَسَجَدَ فَلَهُ الْجَنَّةُ وَأُمِرْتُ بِالسُّجُودِ فَأَبَيْتُ فَلِيَ النَّارُ. That's when the son of Adam recites a verse of prostration and he prostrates. Shaitan secludes himself and he starts crying, saying, may he be destroyed. The son of Adam was commanded to prostrate and he did, so for him is Jannah, for him is paradise. And I was commanded to prostrate, and didn't, so for me is the hellfire. So it shows us the importance of these ayat as well. But again, we know that the Prophet ﷺ sometimes listened to these ayat being recited, was teaching these ayat, and himself did not make sajda. So the companions on purpose demonstrated for the people. 1 week they would recite it in the khutbah, make sajda. The next they would recite it and not do it to teach the people. It's not an obligation, but it is a highly recommended sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. When it comes to how many ayat are there of sajda, this is a difference of opinion amongst the scholars. Right? I believe some of with the Maliki fuqaha, with some of the scholars of the Maliki madhab, this ayah is not an ayah of sajda, right? Because it's not saying to make sajda, and they have their reasons for that. But according to them, this ayah is not an ayah of sajda. But generally speaking, the Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, with the Hanbali scholars, it's 15 ayat that they have of sajda, and I think you'll find all 15 of these in the Mus'haf that we have, the most common copies of the Mus'haf that we have. You'll find them underlined as well. But again, it's an issue where there's difference of opinion because there's different types of evidences, and it's fine. Like we said, if it's not an obligation to begin with, but we follow what we know, and Allah Azza wa Jal guides us to know what is best. But generally speaking, there are 15 ayat of sajda in the Quran. But here again, on the context is Allah Azza wa Jal is saying, what is wrong with these people that they don't believe after all these proofs have been given to them? All this other Quran has been revealed up until this time. The Prophet ﷺ has been engaged with them. And when the Quran is recited for them, that they would not submit themselves to the message of the Quran. Right? When the Quran itself is recited, they would not submit themselves to the message of the Quran. And then Allah Azza wa Jalla gives them the answer and He says, بَلِ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا يُكَذِّبُونَ وَاللَّهُ أَعْلَمُ بِمَا يُوعُونَ فَبَشِّرْهُمْ بِعَذَابٍ أَلِيمٍ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ لَهُمْ أَجْرٌ غَيْرُ مَمْنُونٍ. So He says, but those who have disbelieved, deny. Right? Those who have disbelieved are denying these ayat. Now what's denying means, here in this context, they recognize them as the truth. They understand this is something real, this is the truth, He's not lying, He's not making this up, this is not the speech of a man, according to their own admissions. And purposefully, they are belying these ayat. They know they're the truth, but they're rejecting them outwardly. And that's why Allah says, وَاللَّهُ أَعْلَمُ بِمَا يُوعُونَ. Allah Azza wa Jalla is most aware of what they are concealing inside their hearts. Right? Yu'un means they're gathering inside their hearts. What is it that they're gathering up? They're gathering up the idea that this is definitely true. They would go and listen to the recitation of the Prophet ﷺ. They would meet with each other and admit this can't be the speech of a man. Right? Some of them in the Madani period would admit that he's telling the truth, but refuse to be a part of his followers because they didn't want to lose their power, so on and so forth. So they knew this was the truth. Right? They understood this was the truth, but in their hearts they're gathering all of this stuff, but outside they're denying all of these ayat. So Allah says Allah knows best what they conceal, what hide within themselves. And Allah says, فَبَشِّرْهُمْ بِعَذَابٍ أَلِيمٍ. Now, bashara is good news, right? When you tell somebody bashirhu, you're saying give him, good tidings. That's why it's translated as give him glad tidings, right? It's some kind of good news that makes people happy. And here, just the context of it is Allah Azza wa Jalla is threatening them to such an extent. فَبَشِّرْهُمْ بِعَذَابٍ أَلِيمٍ. Give them the good news of a painful punishment. And we know the painful punishment is not a good news, right? It's not a good news whatsoever. But this is the language, the strength of the language. There's a threat. There's a hint of what's about to happen, right? So you're going to keep doing this. People that understand this is the truth but deny it. فَبَشِّرْهُمْ بِعَذَابٍ أَلِيمٍ. Then just give them the good news of a painful punishment, a severe threat by Allah Azza wa Jal. And then He finishes off the surah, إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ لَهُمْ أَجْرٌ غَيْرُ مَمْنُونٍ. Except for those who believe and do righteous deeds, then for them is an uninterrupted reward. أَجْرٌ غَيْرُ مَمْنُونٍ. And so here, who are the exceptions? So some of the scholars disagree what does the word illa here mean specifically. But except here, either it's accepting those from amongst these same people who will change. Right? And we know there were people from the people of Mecca who denied in the beginning, but then they changed and they accepted Islam. So they are the exception, and some of the scholars they determine the word illa to mean similar to lakin الَّذِينَ. But for those who are not like these, they're behaving differently than these people, they're accepting the message as it's coming, for them is a reward that is uninterrupted. غَيْرُ مَمْنُونَ. Mamnoon can mean one of two things. The major meaning here is to be cut off, مقطوع. That it's something that is broken, it's not connected. So غَيْرُ مَمْنُون means it's going to be connected. And I believe we talked about this last week in Hafiz Ahmad Ali's Halaqa. We're talking about the people of Jannah. Are they going to be there for eternally or not? Right? And Allah Azza wa Jalla mentions فَلَهُمْ أَجْرٌ غَيْرُ مَمْنُونٍ. They're going to have a reward, referring to paradise, Jannah, which will not be cut off, meaning it will be an eternal reward for the believers who will be entered or admitted into paradise. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us from those things we understand as the truth in our hearts, but outwardly reject. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us amongst those who get the uninterrupted reward for our belief and faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. With this we end the surah, but if there are any questions or comments, inshallah, we'll take those. No?
Just in addition, the ayah of فَمَا لَهُمْ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ. Okay? It includes not believing in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Rasul, and the Quran itself.
Yes.
Because I know some people, they try to make that distinction. Yes, we believe in Allah, we believe in the Quran, but the Prophet ﷺ, or how can we say that the Quran will show that everything is authentic, but with the Sunnah, with the Hadith, there's Hadith Da'if, there's Sahih, there's Hassan. How do we know? So just wanted to bring
that's an excellent point. So we do have this minority trend with some people that have an issue with the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Scholars have gone through the Quran and brought out at least 50 ayat from the Quran that just from the Quran alone show the authority of the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. They have given examples to where the Quran makes references to instances and gives, and mentions that this is what was commanded, but those instances are never found in the Quran, they're only found in the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, which shows you the authority of the Sunnah. Something happened, the Prophet ﷺ said something, reported something, did something, and Allah Azza wa Jal in the Quran refers to it as something that was a command by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, meaning the authority came from Allah Azza wa Jal, but it did not come in the Quran. So when we believe in Allah and the belief, the faith, we have 6 pillars of Iman, right? And one of the first one is belief in Allah Azza wa Jal. The second one is belief in Billahi wa malaikatihi, His angels, wa rusulihi, and His messengers. So what is the point of believing in the messengers if we're not going to take their message in? And there are too many ayat in the Quran that talk about al-kitab wal-hikmah. And the scholars talk about what is al-hikmah. Allah Azza wa Jal, and we talked this about last week as well, that wow is from Mughayra. Wow is different, right? Allah Azza wa Jal sent down the book and the wisdom, and Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah, he says, I don't know anyone of merit from the scholars who doesn't say that al-hikmah here is referring to the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? So even in the Quran, Allah Azza wa Jal is referring to the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam as being revealed, something that has been revealed. So definitely belief in Allah and belief in the messenger of the Quran and the sunnah are 2 very important things. And again, why is the shahada made up of 2 components? La ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah. Right? The ulama, they say that la ilaha illallah, you worship only Allah Azza wa Jal. But how do you worship Allah? You worship Allah through the Messenger ﷺ as he taught you to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not, you don't make up your own ways of worship, so you do it as the Prophet. So even in the shahada, there is the emphasis on the Quran and the Sunnah and the importance of both of them being together. Jazakumullah khair for that clarification. Any other comments or questions? No.
When you talk about the verse about the shafaq, okay, just went to another addition is, although most of us, we are lazy these days when it comes to determining the time of the salah, you understand? And we look at the time schedule, the prayer schedule, the calculated stuff, to the extent that a lot of us, we don't know how to determine this. The sunnah is, visual, and when it comes to the easiest for most people is probably Salatul Maghrib, because when the sun sets, it's Maghrib. But when it comes to Salatul Isha, because even from the Tafsir itself, you get this from the Tafsir, that, when after it's Maghrib, how do you know that Isha has actually come in? Because there are times whereby you might not have your phones or whatever, you just have to visualize and say, okay, yes, this is time for Isha. Yeah. And it's when the shafaq has disappeared. Yeah. That's just what I want to know.
When the redness goes away, that is when the time for Isha starts. And we should know these times, because it's true sometimes it happens, especially when we're traveling on an airplane, by the way. Because a lot of times still happen visually, right? So you have to be able, and you can clearly see the horizon, you can clearly see the sun in most of these times. So and you actually see a lot of what we don't get to see when we're on the ground because of the lights and the buildings and all these things around us. When you're traveling by plane, you can actually see the salah times if you're traveling overseas. You see them very clearly. And so you can't determine by calculation at that point because you're 30,000 feet in the air and you don't have any calculation. So you have to resort to what the visuals are. And that is, when does Fajr start? And Fajr is the white light that appears on the horizon, right? And about an hour and a half before the sunrise time, there's a white light. And if some of you have ever seen Fajr, it's actually a really beautiful thing. So they have the Fajr al-Kadhib, which is this white light that shoots up straight into the sky, almost like a triangle one that shoots up into the sky, if you have a clear sight of the horizon. And then that light kind of opens up, and then as it gets horizontal and rises, that is the Fajr, that we call it Fajr al-Sadiq, the true dawn. That is the time for Fajr. And if you wake up early enough, you see the white moving and the darkness kind of going away. So that is the time for Fajr until the tip of the sun pierces the horizon. And then it's a prohibited time, it's Fajr time. The Dhuhr time, again, when the sun is at the very, very top, right? And we have noon, but noon is not, Dhuhr, noon, or the meridian. Noon is just the time we've determined. But when the sun reaches a point where the shadow disappears, right? And then once it passes the point where the shadow starts to appear, then it's past the meridian, then the Dhuhr time starts. Until the shadow of an object is the same size as the object, then Asr time starts. Then Maghrib is the clearest when the sun is set and there's still redness in the sky. So we should know these signs because, again, we do travel overseas and there is a need for understanding visually when the times for Salah come in. And there's always a hikmah for knowing this stuff. Jazakallah khair. Yes?
What I wanted to say, sometimes there's always this one part, visual. And people, a question always come to mind, what if?
Yeah.
Meaning when it's sometimes the weather doesn't warrant
Yeah.
this thing that you said.
Yeah.
So maybe perhaps that's when.
Alhamdulillah. So Allah Azza gave us this knowledge of being able to calculate the time and everything. Yeah. But I mean, alhamdulillah, so we have that. But again, in certain instances, like if you're traveling somewhere unknown, you're lost in the woods, you're traveling in an airplane, that's one of the most modern examples we can give, that you don't have a schedule to follow. And you're above the clouds, so you can usually see what's going on. But then Allah Azza provided this knowledge, right? يَعْلَمُ عَدَدَ السِّنِينَ وَالْحِسَابَ. Allah Azza, so we can determine the time of the year and accounting by the sun and the moon and so on and so forth. So I mean, Allah Azza gave us the ability to do this, but still we have to remember the importance of what the Prophet taught us. And again, there's as we believe that if Allah Azza taught us something, it's never going to be outdated. And alhamdulillah, we still have the example in our time. So, yes.
We hear the verse, إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ لَهُمْ أَجْرٌ غَيْرُ مَمْنُونٍ. I think like in Surah Teen, there's فَلَهُمْ أَجْرٌ غَيْرُ مَمْنُونٍ.
Yes.
So is there a way to remember like whether it's lahum or falahum, or why the letter
So
fa is
there are some grammatical nuances to some of these things. These letters in Arabic, mashallah, so fa can be used for a variety of meanings. One of those is ta'qib, which is it's a continuation of what's previously being discussed, right? So I think one of the surahs that we had kids memorize was An-Nazi'at, right? So you have one nazi'ati gharqa, one nashitati nashta, was-sabihati sabha, fas-sabiqati sabqa. So because the sabiqat is referring to the previous verse, so the word, the letter fa is used to relate it rather than differentiate it between what's happening. That's one of the reasons, right? And so in Surah Al-Teen, it could be that the fa-lahu majnun ghayru mamnun, it's maybe a longer sentence and related to what's previously mentioned here. Illa alladhina amanu wa amilu salihat, it's a continuation of the same. There's no other thing mentioned. There's a direct consequence of that. Also, as some of the scholars have said, that when the fa is removed, it also shows the urgency or the closeness, right? That one consequence has to one action, right? So those who believe and do righteous good deeds, he could say فَلَهُمْ أَجْرٌ غَيْرُ مَمْنُونٍ. So for them is a reward that is unfa. But just to show the immediate, reward for just these two actions, the fa can be excluded as well. And there's times in the Quran when it's done, seemingly for that reason, because you have two ayat that are the same, but the fa will be gone in one and not the other. And so in this ayah, Allah is talking about how close He is, His mercy, and so on and so forth. So even the fa is removed to show the nearness. But again, these are all grammatical nuances. They are subject to interpretation based on the balagha and how the language is used. But Allahu A'lam. I don't know why it's not here.
Are these lessons reflected in our website or someplace?
So these go online. These go on our YouTube channel, which is Roswell Masjid. If you go to YouTube and you just search Roswell Community Masjid, you'll see our YouTube
Oh, it's in
channel.
the YouTube.
Yes, it's in the YouTube channel. So you should be able to see these through our YouTube. We share them on our Facebook page and the YouTube channel. We have them from the beginning until what we've done now, alhamdulillah. Except for last week, I forgot to record it, so I ask your forgiveness, inshallah. Maybe I'll do another one just to record it, inshallah.
So the next session will be on Friday, this coming Friday?
Yes, it should be on the names of Allah. I think it'll be the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I think we've decided to maybe do that once a week. We'll finalize that.
I see.
Because I think if we do it too often, it might become...
Right.
But we do want to keep the names of Allah's going, inshallah.
Okay.
So maybe once a month we'll do the current events, and then give more time to people to come out for something big, inshallah. And then the rest of it, we want to keep the names of Allah series going. It's an important topic, inshallah.
So importance of voting, which is happening at the moment.
Yes.
When can we bring it to the attention of our congregation?
We've talked about this in some of the khutbah about civic engagement. We've talked about it. We had a voter registration drive as well in our state. So we definitely encourage people to get involved, especially in the local elections.
Absolutely,
that have
so important.
much more of an impact than, I'm not going to comment on the presidential one, but the local ones where you're electing people that are directly going to impact you.
Absolutely.
There's an importance to that. But I mean, we had the voter registration drive. We're trying to get people registered, at least understand that they need to be involved civically. And apart from that, being more involved in the community in general is much more of a need for us to be recognizes people who are helping the regular, everyday, runnings of the city.
More volunteers coming up
Volunteers coming up.
and participation.
As the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, he was known for helping the poor, taking care of the widows, taking care of the needy, taking care of people's issues. And this is the kind of stuff that really has an impact. When the community as a collective can be a model of who the Prophet ﷺ was, and being there for the needy, for the poor, for the widows, for the neglected parts of society. That I think, alhamdulillah, is the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ has more of an impact.
There is an organization known as American Muslim Alliance.
Yes.
You must have heard about it.
Yes.
So their basic job is to bring up the Muslims so they participate in the political process.
Yes. There's
So
a
I'm
number of
available
organizations.
for that, if there's any time, an opportunity
Yeah.
to speak to the people, I'm available.
Alhamdulillah. Jazakallah khair. Barakallah. Any other questions or? Yes.
Just to comment, I'm sure you know this. The ulama, there's an ikhtilaf on this issue of voting.
Yes. Yeah.
So we shouldn't say that's just only one position out there. And the politics of Islam is different from democracy. You understand? So the scholars even do also say we can vote, okay, like if there's a need to the Muslims that you're going to achieve, a general benefit for the Muslims. And this is why they've said, okay, yes, you can participate in the process. While some say no, you stick to what the Prophet Allah said in the Quran, Allah has promised you that His help will come. So there are differences of opinion,
It's a contentious issue. It's not an agreed upon issue.
So
It's a contentious issue. Yeah.
So some people might decide, no, we're not going to vote. And some people might decide, okay, yes, we're going to vote. So we should know that, yes, it's not just, that's
even I think outside of the Muslim community, there are so many people that just don't want to vote. It's a contentious issue for
I think
many.
in this case, mashallah, it is very important looking at what is happening in the society today, whereby the Muslim become a black sheep of the society. I think it is very important for us to be involved, whether nationally or locally. Because if we don't voice out, if we don't show our presence, if we don't show our number, then our wives, our children, a day shall come when even the order of Allah will be denied and we cannot do anything about it. So we must be involved. It is very, very important for each and every one of us to be involved, whether verbally or physically.
And like we said, so again, we have to understand that people feel differently about issues like this. We have to respect that. But I mean, I agree that we have to be involved in some sense, because it's at least if we know we can make a difference, we should be involved. That's basically my position on that. But again, it's a contentious issue, and not just within the Muslim community, outside the Muslim community.
We're not going to get to
No, we're not going to get into that.
because like he said, I understood him, I don't want to go there. He said with the national, that's a different issue. Because if you look at it Islamically, where are you going to go? If you want to get into that, where are you going to go?
Yeah.
Because Islam said hadith is authentic. A nation that is led by a woman is never going to be successful. This is hadith that is authentic. It is in the Sunnah. It's in the Tafsir books. This is authentic. You have another person, he's saying what he's saying. You have both of them, they're supporting, gays and homosexuals. People don't like to talk about this, but our position in Islam is clear. So where do you go? But like you said, if it's to bring a benefit to, so it's. I remember a long time ago, Masjid, long time ago, there was a brother who came telling us to vote. He came. I asked him one question. He couldn't answer the question because I put in there was no way he could answer the question. He said you must be studying. That's what he said. He said you must be studying. There was no way, So, and if you, Allah said, if you obey His commandments, He will help you. He will make you inherit the earth. This is what He said. So it's and because the scholars are divided upon it, you just keep quiet. Whatever you want to do. There's a question or something I wanted to say.
Yes.
I would like to add just
we can continue this inshallah offline.
Yeah, please.
Let's continue the discussion.
you were. I didn't know. know that.
No, it's okay.
Oh, okay, I didn't.
It's okay. We can edit it out, don't worry, if you don't want to be on there.
I didn't know that.
I think what they believe in or what they support or what they oppose, as far as concerned, it shouldn't be our business.